Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the 2011 Arthur Ashe Courage Award recipient, Mr. Dewey Buzzella.
Thank you. Kalamazoo, am I saying that right? I never even knew there was a name like that. But I'm very, very pleased to be out here tonight. You know, I'm one of the guys that was fortunate. You may think that it was a way where I got disadvantage in my life where things just happened and it tore me down. I would have to say that, you know, a lot of things that happened to me, it made me a better man. It made me a little bit more blessed than what I ever thought would happen in my lifetime. You know, but my story begins, you know, with 7 major things. And the 7 major things that I will speak about tonight are the things that all of us go through in one way, form, or fashion. There's no way around it. And the first is fear. You know, you got to ask yourself, what would you do if you didn't have fear in your life? What would you do if you didn't have fear if you wanted to accomplish something with yourself or with someone else? Second is making a commitment that deals with whatever is important to you, and then being persistent with it. That's number 3, being persistent. And I had to learn these 3 major things with the 4 other things that go along with it. The next one I had to learn was forgiveness, not only for myself, but for others. And then the 5th thing I had to learn was determination. Determination is the key to anything that you put yourself, you know, through in life. But at the same token, to say to yourself, you know, I did it. You know, I didn't allow anybody else to tell me what I couldn't do. I did it. And then the 2 major things that we all got to deal with one way or another is hope and faith. That's number 6, hope and faith. Having that in your life, because I learned to have it and at the same time learn to lose it. And then the major one that we all deal with and we can't get around it is struggle and conflict. The struggle and conflict of just dealing with life itself. That's not dealing with the things that you got to deal with, you know, in survival, dealing with school, dealing with, you know, eating. We're just talking about life struggles and conflicts, the things that you got to deal with every day. And these are the 7 major things that you deal with every day of your life, one way or another, and there's no way around it. So my story begins when I was 9 years old. I was born in Brooklyn, New York. I was born in Coney Island Hospital, and I lived somewhere in the outskirts of Brooklyn. And I remember growing up and with my brothers, Albert, Michael, Leon, and Ernie, and myself, and my one sister, Janice. And it was one Pacific day. I remember playing in the backyard. And while we playing in the backyard, it was a nice summer hot day, and my father was back there. You know, we all were having a cookout, and people were over. And my mother called me over. And when she called me over, she said to me, Dewey, do you know that you have more brothers and sisters? I said, really, Ma? She said, yeah. And they're going to be coming to live with you. And it was my brother, Tony, Lorraine, Janice, and Victoria. And so when I found out about it, I was kind of happy. I said, oh, wow, they're going to be coming living with me. You know, they were older than me. I said, well, I ain't going to be the older one now. I said, well, I'm going to have somebody else. I said, okay. And then she told me something. She said, you make sure you take care of your brothers and your sister. I said, okay, Ma. I hugged and I walked away and started playing again. So I went back there and I'm picking up snakes, putting them in my pocket. You know, I'm doing like, you know, I'm just having fun. But there was something on a specific day that I'll never forget. It was my father. My father was in the backyard cooking, and it was something that he did. When he picked the chicken up, he took it and he chopped off his head. And the chicken was running around with his head chopped off. And I looked at the chicken, and that's exactly how I remember my father. Like that chicken, cold. Because right behind that, I would say it was no more than 2 weeks later. It wasn't long. I heard a lot of screaming, and it was coming from my house. So as a kid, I went inside my house, and when I walked in, there he is, beating up on my mother. And I did the best that I could do for a 9-year-old. I went up to him, and I grabbed him around the leg, get off my mother. And my brothers and sisters, they crying, and he took me and threw me across the room like I was trash. I didn't mean anything to him. And continued to beat up on my mother. And after he beat up on my mother, the ambulance came. And when the ambulance came, that was the last I seen my mother ever. My father just disappeared. Didn't see him no more after that. And the first thing that happened, I went into foster home and group homes. And when I got into foster home and group homes, I wanted to be with my mother. They were telling me that my mother was dead. So I said that my father beat my mother to death because I never seen her after that. And life took a turn. The turn that it took, that I was in foster homes and group homes, and while I'm in foster home and group homes, I did what my mother said. I was running away to try to be with my brothers. I ran away so much for close to a year that one time they took me in one of the group homes and they shaved off my afro. They took all that off and they put me in a pair of diapers. The diapers they had me in from the clothes was so I wouldn't run away. But guess what? When the door opened, I ran away anyway. And that's how they caught me, with the diapers on. You know, but I didn't care. I wanted to be with my brothers. And it took a little over a year before me and my brothers were together. And when we did get together, we were living out in the Bronx, 995 Evergreen Avenue in Westchester. And things were pretty good for a while. You know, I was going to school. I was doing all the things that I was supposed to do. I was doing like any other normal kid. And one thing about these people who I was living with, they were called the Colemans, my foster parents. And Miss Coleman was taking me from the Bronx to Queens. 11455 208th Street in Murdoch in Queens, New York. I was right across the street from Andrew Jackson High School. And so, you know, I was going there every weekend. And we did this for close to a little over maybe 2 years. And when we finally moved out to Queens, everything was, you know, it was like a process. And when I got out there, you know, I knew I had a few friends and everything. And life was normal, you know. In fact, I had a little paper route. You know, I was playing baseball. I was playing a little league. New York Mets was my favorite team. And, you know, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do as a kid. Everything is working out pretty good. But then something happened. I was going to 192 on Hollis Avenue. And when I graduated from school, I skipped a grade. And I went from the 8th to the 10th. And when I got in the 10th grade, when I got to Anderson High School, I wanted to be accepted. And because of me wanting to be accepted, that was the first thing I did wrong. Because what happened after that took a serious turn in my life. The first thing I did wrong when I was hanging out with these guys, I started smoking cigarettes. The second thing I did wrong when I started hanging out with these guys, wanted to be accepted, I started smoking reefer. The next thing I did bad, that I started drinking. And then after I started drinking, I started cutting class. And when I started cutting class, before I know it, I dropped up out of school. And when I dropped up out of school in the 10th grade, there was something else that I did. I got into a fight. I got into a fight with a guy by the name of Stanley Jackson. And when I got into the fight with Stanley Jackson, I beat him up. But there was something else that happened. The price was that he didn't come after me, he went after my brother. And he murdered my brother, stabbed him through the heart, through the back, in front of Andrew Jackson High School at a night of a party. And my life took another turn. Because after that, my older brother, Tony, he asked me to come up to live with him upstate. And when I got upstate, because he knew I was going to, going to get in trouble while I was down in New York City. He said, well, come up here and live with me. So I said, you know what, I'll give it a try. But me, being the type of person I was, wanted to be Mr. Slick, wanted to be accepted, I carried that New York attitude with me upstate. He was living in Hyde Park, and he introduced me to a town called Poughkeepsie. And when I got to Poughkeepsie, I found out about Madison Street Park. Madison Street Park is where everybody goes in and gamble and get high and smoke and do their normal thing. But this is the thing about when I got there. My older brother said, listen, man, you got to go to school. You got to do something with yourself. I said, man, nah, man, I ain't even thinking about school, man. I don't even want to go to school. School ain't even on my mind. We got to do something. So I said, you know what? I went and I got a trade. My trade was in carpentry, and I started working. But while I'm working, I'm still doing all the activities that I brought from New York with me. And I bought it to Manchester Street Park. But there was a guy who I met by the name of Wayne. And when me and Wayne, he was 15 years old. I found out that he was 15 after something happened. But he was kind of mature for his age. Because I usually hang out with older, wiser guys. And so something apparently happened after 4 months that I was in the town. And I got arrested. I got arrested for the crime of murder of a 92-year-old woman who came home from bingo 11 o'clock at night, walked inside the house, and was hit upside the head with an object, and was gagged and tied, and had 6 feet of cloth. Look, I'm 6'1". She had 6 feet of cloth stuffed down her mouth with a chisel. And she ain't had a chance to take her coat off. And that's how they found her. Suffocated to death. And they said I did the murder. They arrested me. And I said, man, you got the wrong man. It wasn't me. I didn't do this. I said, yes. I argue with women, but I never hit a woman a day in my life. Never. We're telling you. I said, listen, I'm telling you, I didn't do it, man. It wasn't me. You got the wrong man. So they were supposed to keep me for 72 hours, which means 3 days. That's the law. But guess what happened? They took me from their county jail, and from their precinct, and they put me in the county jail. I was in the county jail for 28 days. 28 days. That's how bad they wanted to pin this case on me. And what happened was that while I'm in there was no evidence on me. There was nothing at all that said that I did the murder. And so what happened after 28 days, the case was dismissed on what they call a not found bill, which means there was no evidence, nothing at all that pointed to me doing this crime. I came out like a roaring lion. Great, I ain't gonna ever worry about this no more. I ain't ever got to worry about this no more. I think this is over with. I'm done. It's finished. How wrong I was. Because what happened was that I was out there for 5.5 years. And for the 5.5 years I was out there, there was 2 other crimes that was done. The same exact way that my crime was done. One lady was gagged and tied and beat up while she came inside of our house, the same way that Miss Crasper was. And there was another one that was murdered no more than 6 months later, of a lady by the name of the King sisters. One of them was beat into a coma, one of them came out of a coma, and one of them died. And 2 guys got arrested for this crime. One lady said, these are the gentlemen that did this to me. And the other one said, this is the one that murdered my sister. And here's the catch. The 2 crimes that I'm talking about are very, 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 very similar to the case that I had. In fact, it was in the Poughkeepsie Journal where the chief of police said, listen, these crimes are similar to the ones with Miss Crasper. But, however, what they said is that we're going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. We already got the guys who committed these crimes. One committed, we already got them for the robbery and the beating of this woman, and we got them for the murder of another one. And so they got sentenced to 20 years of life. So they said, listen, we ain't going to worry about him no more. We're going to go after Mr. Bozello. So 5.5 years went by. And for the 5.5 years that went by, I was going to Floyd Patterson boxing camp. I was going back to school. I was going to Dutch Community College. I made the Poughkeepsie Journal for playing baseball. I thought I was the next Brooks Robinson. I was using a 32-inch bat, and I was only 5'9", and I was smacking the ball 275 feet from a standstill. This is even without a pitch. So I knew I was good. What happened, simple fact, that when 5.5 years went by, after I turned my life around, got away from the streets and said, I'm done with this, God said, I got another plan for you, buddy. I got rearrested. And when I got rearrested for the crime of Miss Crasper, murder, I said I didn't do it. It wasn't me. But guess what? They made a deal with two guys who were locked up in physical correctional facility at the same time. They got a get out of jail free card to testify against me. And to get out of jail free card that they got to testify against me, they needed a collaborating witness because they were known as accomplices. And so what happened was when they got up on the stand, they needed someone else to testify that they were there. One of the guy's brothers got involved in the case, and that's what got me convicted. Because during my case, there wasn't one single shred of evidence, nothing that pointed to me at all. Nothing except their testimony. And when the other guy got up on the stand and said, listen, I was there with my brother on the night of the murder, and we were watching him from across the street, that's what got me convicted. Because he had nothing to lose. He had no felony, and he had no arrests. The other two had felonies, and they were locked up for a crime. One got early parole, and the other one got his case dismissed, and he had 7 more years to do. So they made a sweet deal. And guess what happened? A surprise witness came up on the stand and said it wasn't me who committed the murder, it was her old man who committed the murder. They found the man's fingerprints. And you know what they did? Nothing. They didn't go after him. They still came after me. So after 2 weeks of trial, with no single shred of evidence pointed to me, I was found guilty. And when I was found guilty, 7 women and 5 men, all of them broke down crying right there in the jury room. And I hit the floor. I cried. But you got the wrong man. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. I didn't do it. I didn't do it. And I looked at the jury. I said, it's too late. You took away my life. It's too late. It's too late. And so many things happened within the next month that said that I didn't do it. The judge kept denying. He said, take it up with the appellate court. Take it up with the appellate court. Take it up with the appellate court. Take it up with the Supreme Court. He kept denying me. Everything kept saying, listen, get this man a retrial. Even the NAACP got involved. But guess what? After 2 weeks, they turned their back on me, like everybody else, because it was a 92-year-old woman that was murdered. So the judge sentenced me to 20 years to life. And the first thing that ran through my mind was fear. Man, how am I going to deal with 20 years to life? How? And I'm back in the bullpen and I'm talking to God. What have I done? What have I done so bad that I deserve 20 years of life? Yeah, I ran the streets, but I wasn't no murderer. I got into fights, but I wasn't no murderer. I never stabbed nobody, never shot nobody. Why am I here? What about if anybody deserved to be dead, the guy who murdered my brother? Him, he the one that deserved to be dead. He deserved to be out of here. I ain't hear no answer. So they took me from Poughkeepsie over to downstate. When I got to downstate, my life took a complete turn. When I walked in there, just soon I walked in, there was a correctional officer who made my day miserable. The first thing he did, he had a newspaper article in his hand. He said, oh, you're the one. He pointed to it. He said, oh, you're the one that murdered that old lady. I said, man, I don't know what you're talking about, man. It wasn't me. I don't know what you're talking about. Man, get up. Get against the wall. He patted me down. I mean, he did me dirty. He didn't treat me at all like a human being. And the first thing he did after he patted me down, he said, go over there. Take off all your clothes. I did what I had to do what he told me to do. And then he made me shave off everything. And then after that, he took me and put me in the corner. He pesticided me down. He sprayed me down like a dog. Sprayed me down. And I go take a shower. And when I came out, he had some green clothes waiting for me. And then he made me hold up a sign. And the sign was 84A0172. He said, that's who you are. said, man, I ain't answering that. He said, when I call you out, you give me your number. So my name is Mr. Bozella. Oh, you one of them hard ass, huh? Whatever, man. I'm not answering to that. And he made my day a little bit more miserable. Because right after that, I had to take blood tests. I mean, it was so miserable that when it was time for me to go back, I was happy to be in my cell. Can you imagine that? You happy to be in your cell? And when I got in my cell, I walked in and I was trying to find some peace. So I took the things they gave me and I laid it down, and the New Testament fell out of it. And I picked the New Testament up and I started reading to try to find some peace. And guess what? All hell broke loose. All hell. And I took it and I threw it across the room. And I talked to God. God, what have I done so bad that I deserve 20 years of life? What have I done? I ain't never murdered nobody. I turned my life around. I'm going to school. I wasn't hanging out. Look at me. I got in the newspaper. I did everything right. What have I done? No answer. 2 weeks later, I was shipped to Sing Sing Correctional Facility in Ossining, New York. And when I got to Ossining, which is supposed to be a notorious place, which is Sing Sing Correctional Facility, where Al Capone and all of them were supposed to be at, the first thing I said to myself, I said, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're 6'9", what color you are. You could be a correctional officer. You could be an inmate, whatever you want to call them. A civilian. Don't put your hands on me. Don't put your hands on me. I'm going to do what I got to do to survive in here. Because it was fear. I said, I might not never get out of here, but ain't nobody going to do nothing to me, period. And that was my attitude. I went from a guy who cared about society and cared about life to a raging maniac. I became what they wanted me to be. And that's how I lived. I lived just like that. And I lived like that for close to 2 years. I didn't care about nothing. Life didn't mean anything to me. If somebody killed me, thank you. I ain't got to deal with this 20 years. Thank you. Because what we would consider was civilly dead. And by law, I am a walking zombie. That's what I consider it. I wasn't allowed to get married. I had no rights, no nothing. And that's how they treated me. But I demanded something else out of myself. Nothing. And I lived like that. Until one day, I was coming from the yard. And when I was coming from the yard, there was an older, wiser guy by the name of Sharif. I just finished working out. And he came up to me and he said, yo, man, can I talk to you for a minute? I said, yeah, brother, what's up? He said, yo, man, you fronting. I said, fronting? Yo, man, go ahead, man. I ain't trying to hear that, man. He said, nah, man, listen, I got to talk to you. You fronting. That's not you. I said, man, go ahead, man. What you want to throw down? What's up? What's happening? You know, he said, nah, bro, I need to talk to you. His way of talking to me was that he's seen something in me that I ain't even seeing myself no more. And right after I left him, it wasn't even 5 minutes. A correctional officer told me to do something, and I didn't do it. And I was put in keep lock. Keep lock means I'm in my cell for 24 hours. I get 1 hour rest because I disobeyed a direct order. That's how much life meant to me. I even enjoyed being in my cell, keep lock. It didn't even bother me. But there was something about this one keep lock. Because while I was in keep lock, I ran out of cigarettes. And when I ran out of cigarettes, there was a guy who I knew that came by, and I asked him for one. And when I asked him for the cigarette, the first thing he said to me was, yo, man, I don't have one. What do you mean you don't have one? I'm looking right at it. It's right there in your pocket. What do you mean you don't have one? Oh, that's how you getting down. Because you know when I get out, I'm going to get mine. So why are you acting like that? He gave me the cigarette. But it was the way he gave me the cigarette. I'm a prideful guy. I don't like asking anybody for anything. But because of me being in keep lock and I can't go out here and get one, I wanted a cigarette. And so when I took the cigarette and he walked away, I looked at it. And everything in my life flashed through me. Everything. And the first thing I said to myself was, damn, look at you, man. Look at you. Yeah, this is supposed to be a boxer. You letting this cigarette control you. Look at you. Let's look at, man, you became an animal, man. You ain't doing nothing. You ain't doing, I mean, you ain't getting no trade. You ain't going to school. All the things you were doing out in the streets, you just did nothing. You ain't doing nothing with your life, man. Nothing. If you was to die right now, they can bury you outside. Nobody knows anything about you, man. Nothing. They won't know anything about you. You gone. That's it. You buried in a box. They don't even know you exist anymore. Just look at you, man. You did nothing with your life. And I mean, I came down on myself hard. I didn't give myself no pity. And so when I looked in the mirror at myself, I mean, the first thing I did is I started giving away all the things that I had in myself that were illegal. And when people were coming by, I was saying, yo, here, man, take this. They said, yo, man, you all right? I said, nah, man, yo, man, just take this, man. Go ahead, man. I mean, you all right, man? You bugging, man? What's up with you, man? What's happening, man? And I kept giving away all the stuff that was illegal in myself. So one guy came by, he said, yo, man, you all right, man? I said, yo, man, I'm all right, man. I know what I'm doing, man. And when I got out of Keep Lock, there was a guy who was my right-hand man. His name was Jose. That was my get-high partner. That was my fighting partner, the whole nine. He said, yo, man, let's go get high. I said, yo, listen here, Jose, man, I'm done, man. I'm done with that. And he looked at me. And when he looked at me, he said, yo, man, you serious, man? I said, man, no, I'm done with that, man. I don't want to be with that no more. Oh, so you flipping on me, man? Why? Yo, that's how you getting down? And flipping means that I'm no longer his partner. And because of me no longer being his partner, that means that, you know, we ain't the same. You know, inside the joint, it's a whole different world when you do something like that. So I told him, I said, listen, man, if you want to go there, man, you know, you can go there, man. But I said, I'm done. Oh, you be back. You be back. I ain't even worrying about it. You be back. You be back. I said, yeah, all right. I said, you don't know me. Once I make up my mind how I really am. So he found that out. Because the first thing that happened, I started working out again. And as I started working out, I started hanging out with Sharif. And the first thing I went and I did when I was hanging out with Sharif, I started getting back into classes. And when I got back into class, the first thing I went and did, I went and got my GED. The second thing I went and I did, I went and got a paralegal certificate in law. The next thing I went and I did, I got human development, substance abuse, and counseling. I got HIV and AIDS and counseling. I got peer counseling. I mean, I took every daggone academical class you could think of. I was not playing no more. I went and I turned my life around. I got serious about getting myself together. And while I was getting myself together, a guy by the name of Bob Jackson, Sergeant Bob Jackson, he started the Sing Sing boxing team. And I walked up to him and I said, listen, Bob, I want to get on the boxing team. And he said, listen here, I want you to know something. He said, I know you get into trouble and everything. He said, if you can stay out of trouble, I'll let you get on the boxing team. I said, listen, you ain't got to worry about me no more. You let me get on this boxing team, you ain't ever got to worry about me no more. He said, listen, man, I'm taking a chance with you because you got life. I said, don't worry about me, man. Just let me get on the team. You'll see. I guarantee you, I won't let you down. Not only did I didn't let him down, I became Sing Sing light heavyweight champion. I also got in the New York Daily News for boxing, and I was also on Channel 47. That's how serious I took it. And while I'm doing this, I still needed to find a way to get out of jail. So I had to make a commitment. The first commitment I made was getting myself academically prepared for society, and the second commitment I made was getting my life in order. And after I got myself in order, I needed to find a way to get out of jail, so I had to be persistent. And I did this for the next it was 5.5 years went by. And when the 5.5 years went by, it was 1990. 1990, something happened. My case got overturned. And when my case got overturned, that means I got a chance for a retrial. And when I got the retrial, I said, great, I got a chance, and I can go out here. Because I know I can fight. I know I can beat somebody out here I can win a title off of. So I know I can do that. And plus, I had the academical skills. And I had a couple of trades under my belt. I said, so I have something off back to society when I get out here. I said, okay. So when I get back down there, they said, Mr. Bozello, we're taking you back to trial. I said, I didn't do it, so let's go back. I don't care. This time, it was so bad. I mean, the trial was so bad. I mean, the guy who testified for them the first time testified for me the second time. He got up on the stand and said, listen, man, the only reason why I testified against this man the first time was because I wanted to get my brother out of jail. Now that I got my brother out of jail, I want you to know I committed perjury. The trial got so bad that the girl got up on the stand and said, listen, I'm telling you, it wasn't him who committed the murder, it was my old man who committed the murder. And because of what she said, they found his fingerprint. Right? I mean, that's how bad the case got. Nothing. There was not one single thing that said that I did the murder. Nothing. And it got so bad that after, when the trial was ready to come to a close, the prosecuting district attorney came up and he said, we'll give Mr. Bozella 7 to 14. I had 6.5 years in if he would cop out to manslaughter and tell us that he did it. I said, no, I can't do that. So then he came back with another deal. He said, listen, we'll give you manslaughter with time served, when you can go back to Sing Sing and you'll be released. I said, I can't do it. I didn't do the murder. Then, right before the jury was ready to come back, they was going to give me what they call a scenario alpha plea, where all I had, and in terms of me signing a piece of paper, I walk right out the courtroom. And I don't have to tell them how I did the murder. I don't have to say anything. Just sign a piece of paper on the dotted line and you can walk. Well, you know what happened. I got resentenced to 20 years of life with nothing. And I got in the back when they found me guilty. I went in the back and I talked to God again. What have I done? What have I done so bad that I deserve 20 years of life? I did everything right. I turned my life around. I'm staying out of trouble. I'm going to school. I got a couple of trades. I got a chance to go out here and get my life together with this boxing thing. Why are you doing this to me? What's happening? I'm a changed person. I'm not the same guy. Okay, I didn't hear no answer. I got back to Sing Sing. When I got back to Sing Sing from downstate, I walked in there and I greeted everybody who I know. I said what's up to them and everything. And then the following day, I went down to the chapel area. When I got down to the chapel area, something special happened. Because it was a test. And the test was, the guy who murdered my brother was down in that chapel. And I said to myself, when I was running around wild, if I ever run into him, I'm going to take his head. He got to go. Now, here's the catch. The catch is this. Cold the streets, get him. There's nothing to talk about. There's nothing to talk about. You're supposed to get him, bro. That's the code of the streets. Code of the prison. Yo, man, he murdered your brother, man. He got to go. You know what you're supposed to do. You know what you got to do. And the first thing I said to myself, you got to be kidding me. This can't be real. And God was telling me, oh, you said you changed. Let me see how much you changed. There's the guy. There's the man right there who murdered your brother. Let me see what you're going to do. There he is. So I went back to my cell and I thought everything out for 3 days. And when I thought everything out, I thought about everything. And I came out myself. And when I came out myself, we got what we call the flats, H Gallery. H Gallery is where got to go out this way. There's no other way to go out the block. This is where you go to the chapel area. This is where you go to get down to Taipan. This is where you go to go out to the yard. This is where you go to go out to the hospital, etc., the school building, etc., etc. You got to go this way. And so as I'm coming down the gallery, right, guess who I see? I see the guy who murdered my brother. Now, we got what we call H Gallery, R Gallery, O and P Gallery. And we got 4 galleries, and guys are like this. They looking. They said, oh, here it goes. All hell about to break loose. Because everybody know I'm not a punk. And everybody know this guy murdered my brother. And they waiting like vultures to see what I'm going to do. So I walk up to him. And when I walk up to him, I said, yo, man, Can I talk to you for a minute? He said, yeah. And we went around the corner, away from the OIC office where the corrections officers were at. And I asked him one question. And I said, yo, man, why you murder my brother? He said, I was 15 years old. There was something just happened. And I looked him up and down. And after I looked him up and down, and I said to him, I said, you know what? I forgive you. Put my hand out. And we shook hands. And then I hugged him. And when I hugged him, I said, yo, man, you ain't got to worry about nobody doing anything to you. I said, you got my word on that. Nobody going to stab you. Nobody going to jump you. Nobody going to do nothing. You got my word on that. And we looked at each other, and I walked away. And my man, he pissed. You ain't going to do nothing, man. You ain't going to do nothing. Yo, I'll take care of him. Yo, you ain't going to do nothing. He murdered your brother. You ain't going to do nothing. I said, yo, that's between me, him, and God. You ain't going to do, but you ain't going to do nothing, man. He murdered your brother. Once again, it's between me, him, and God. And I walked away. And when I walked away, that was my test. At a time of adversity, can you live out what you say you're about? You took human development. You took alternative to violence. You took violent behavior awareness. You took all these things. Now let me see if you can use it at a time of adversity. Let me see if you can forgive. Because if you want forgiveness, then how are you going to say that you can't learn to forgive? So I did that. But I still needed to find a way to get out of jail. So my determination was, I want my freedom. I want out of here. I don't want to be stuck here. I want to get out. And so from 1990, the next 11 years, I did everything I could possibly get my hands on. In fact, I was teaching classes. And while I'm going through all these different type of programs, I got a couple of more trades. And in 2001, after 11 years went by, something happened. And what happened was that I found out about DNA testing. DNA testing was done through the Innocent Project because all my remedies in my case, every single one of them was done. I had nothing left. I was shot down by the United States Supreme Court. Everything. I had nothing. So I knew that my chances of getting out of prison were 100 to 1. Because I had life, what they call 9999.9, which means they don't have to let me go. They don't have to let me go. If they let you go, it's a privilege. So guess what happened? Governor Pataki passed a law, and the law was that anybody who's a violent offender, before we even consider them to go home, they had to have been to the parole board at least 4 or 5 times. And guess what? I went to the parole board 2 years later, 2003. In 2003 came, I had over 30-something certificates. And that made 20 years I got in. And when I got to the parole board, the only thing that happened to me that was good was that lifers were allowed to get married in 1990 when they passed the law. And when they passed the law, 5 years later, I ran into my wife. And I met her down in the visiting room through her brother. And I was the picture man. That's how much program I was doing. I went out there, and then a year later, we got married, a little over a year later. That was the only good thing that happened, because everything else was a mess. Because after I went to that first parole board, they gave me 2 years. Why? Because I would not admit to the nature of the crime. I would not tell them I did it. I refused to tell them I did it. And then 2 more years went by. And the 2 more years that went by from 2003 to 2005, I went and I got my bachelor's degree, Bachelor's of Science. And when I got my bachelor's degree, everything was, I said, man, now I know I'm supposed to get out of here. I know, I'm doing everything right. I'm doing everything right. I got 52 certificates. I got 3 trades, and I got my bachelor's degree. I said, yeah, my chances of getting out now better. Guess what happened? 2 more years. And when they gave me 2 more years, I didn't take it too well this time. You know the reason why I didn't take it too well this time? Because everything that I was busting my butt for was phony to me. They were just lying to me. And I told my wife, I said, baby, if they're waiting for me to tell them I did it, I'm going to die in prison. If you want to leave, this is your chance. If you want to walk out in this relationship, in this marriage, you can do that. She said, no, I ain't going nowhere. And she stood by me. And that was 15 years. And here's the catch. From 2005, right behind that, I went up to the box, what they call a special housing unit, because I wanted to find some type of peace. The peace I wanted, I didn't want to be around population because I didn't want to beat up on nobody. I didn't want to hurt nobody. I didn't want to hurt no inmate. I didn't want to hurt no correctional officer, nor did I want to hurt any civilian. I needed to deal with this by myself. And so when I got up there, I cried like a baby. I mean, I let it all out. Not having my mother. While I was locked up, my brother Tony got shot in the head 2 times and murdered in his car and set on fire. My brother Leon, he died of AIDS. I mean, my life is a mess. My foster parents, they passed away. I mean, I'm just dealing with all this. And then all the tragedy that I'm going through, and then being locked up for something I didn't do. I mean, I'm letting it all out. I let it all out. And that was on a Friday. Monday came. I found out the Innocent Project had accepted my case because I had got a letter from them. And when I got the letter, they said, Mr. Mozella, we have accepted your case. Because I was writing them every week. That's how bad I wanted to get out. And I was sending them 18 newspaper articles, the same newspaper articles with the same letter every week. Man, I want to get out of here. And I'm busting my butt until they finally gave me an answer, which took 5 years. And I said, great. Now I got a chance. Now maybe I can get out of here. Oh, guess what? Still wasn't over. Because when 2007 came, I went to another parole board. And this time when I went to the parole board, there was something else that happened. The Innocent Project said that they could no longer do my case. Why? Because in 2005, as soon as they accepted my case, the Poughkeepsie Police Department destroyed all evidence. They destroyed the DNA, and they destroyed the hair sample and the blood sample, and they destroyed over 100 items. I said, you got to be kidding me. This can't be happening. How am I going to get out of jail? How? You got to be kidding me. And I talked to God again. What have I done? What have I done so bad? What? No answer. And here's the catch. When I went to this parole board in 2007, right, I went to them with a master's degree. Neo-Theological Seminary, Professional Studies in Religion. My bachelor's and 52 certificates with 3 different trades. And the thing about it, when the Innocent Project left my case alone, they got a high-powered law firm by the name of Wilmer Cutler Hare Law Firm in Manhattan to get involved in my case. Because that's how much they believed in my innocence. Because once they said they could no longer get involved in me, they still believed in my innocence, and they got my case. And they worked on my case to where they believed in me, and they wrote a 65-page document to the parole board to let them see why I'm innocent. In fact, one of the commissioners talked to me about my case when he wasn't supposed to, Mr. Ferguson. He said, Mr. Mozella, you got Brady material here. You got Brady material here. He said it 4 times. I said, you told me, man, I'm not allowed to talk about my case. I'm not here to talk about my case. I'm talking about trying to get home on parole, to be home with my family. Guess what? With all that on my side, they gave me 2 more years. And when they gave me the 2 more years, I just looked, I said, you got to be kidding me. You just can't be real. And I did everything that you asked for, the 259 I-1 form. dealing with the penal system. I did everything that you asked for. I'm not in trouble. I haven't been in trouble in over 15 years. What do you want? What am I supposed to do? How am I going to get out of here? Are you serious? And my faith started dying. My hope in my faith was killing me. What I got to do to get out of here? So from 2007 to 2008, I was going through struggle and conflict. What am I going to do? How am I going to get out of here? And here's the catch. In 2008, I went to another parole board. And when I got to this parole board, you already know what they did. They gave me 2 more years. And when they gave me the 2 more years, Wilmer Cutler Hair Law Firm is working on my case. And they told me, when they came up to see me at Orsini, Otisville, they said, Mr. Bozello, we're running out of options. Can't find none of the witnesses. Either they're gone or they're dead, and everything inside your case is destroyed. I said, you got to be kidding me, man. I said, but you know something? I said, I just got a gut feeling. Go talk to the police officer. I just got a gut feeling if you go talk to them, something might happen. I know that the police department did something wrong, man. Just go see him. Go talk to him. At first, they were redemptive. But something happened. They had nothing else left. So they went by to see this police officer, and they went by his house. When they went by his house, at first he was kind of redemptive. And then he opened up. He said, I want you to know that I always knew that one day someone would come talk to me about this man's case. I want you to know that I kept his personal files at my house for the last 18 years. They said, what? Are you supposed to keep this man's files at your house? No, I'm not supposed to. Or have you kept anybody else's files at your house? No, I have not. He said, but I want you to know that I always knew that one day talk to me in case. So here are his files. Inside them files was what they call exploratory evidence, newly discovered evidence, which is Brady material. 4 pieces of things that said, I did not commit the murder. And everything that the guys that got up on the stand that said that I did was totally contradictory to what was in them documents. One girl said that she was down the block from 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock, and she said she know the guys who were there. And she said she did not see him at all because she was sitting there on the park bench with her aunt. And another one said, listen, from 9 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock that night, I was right at the windowsill, and I was looking at my car, and I did not see anybody. And then 2 other people who live inside the building, they said, listen, man, we were running in and out of the building. We didn't see anybody. In fact, there was nothing done with the door. There was nothing wrong with the door at all. And it's continued and continued and continued. It got so bad that they found another piece of evidence that said that I did not commit the murder with a double assault. And then they found another piece of evidence. This piece of evidence was even more of a hurting to me, which was in 1978, 6 months after the Crasper murder, a guy made a tape statement saying that, listen, I know the guys who committed another murder. They told me they were at the house, and this is what happened to the person. This is on tape in 1970. And here's the thing about it. The prosecuting district attorney, who was in there with 2 police officers who prosecuted me in 1983 and prosecuted me again in 1990, was in the room when this statement was made. And in 2008, 30 years later, they found the tape statement. And so with this new evidence, they brought it before the judge. And when they brought it before the judge, 2009, October 28, my case was overturned. And he asked the prosecuting district attorney, what are you going to do, prosecuting district attorney? Well, we ain't got nothing. There's no evidence. There's no nothing. We got to let it go. We got to dismiss it. And the judge said, listen, this is overwhelming evidence. I believe if this man would have had this in 1983 or 1990, the possibility of him getting guilty would have been very, 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 very slim. Case dismissed. And when the case got dismissed, the first thing I did, I said, it took me 32 years. I was 18 years old. I was 17, just turned 18. It took me 32 years to prove my innocence, and I cried. It wasn't a cry of anger, hurt, and pain. It was a cry that I proved that I didn't do it, even if it meant death. I was not going to change my mind. And that was my commitment. So I had to deal with my fear. I had to deal with my commitment. I had to deal with my persistence. I had to deal with my forgiveness. I had to deal with my determination. I had to deal with my hope and faith. And then I had to deal with my struggles and conflicts. And even when I got out, with all the things that I had to get rid of over 26, close to 27 years of prison mentality. And when I came out, I had to say to myself, this is the change I got to make to get my life together. And so the first thing I did, I wasn't even home a week. I was working in Walmart. I took that $10 an hour job. Daggone right I took that. I did not play with it. I took it because I wanted to support my family. And when I got in there, it was a night shift. And the night shift was, yeah, you know what, man? I can't do this, man, because I don't want to live like a vampire. I want to be out in the daytime. I want to be with the people. I can't live like this. I want to be out. I want to see y'all. You know, this isn't the life I want to live at night. This nightlife is what got me in trouble. So I want to be out in the daytime. So after that was done and over with, I got a job dealing with RECAP, Regional Economic Community Action Program. Was dealing with ex-offenders and helping them to rehabilitate themselves when they come out of prison. Not only did I help rehabilitate them, it helped rehabilitate me by me talking to them. And that's what I did for a while. And while I was out there dealing with that, something happened along the way. What happened along the way was that the Innocent Project told ESPN about me because they were looking for a story. And the story was of a boxer, of a guy who was in the sports. I was a boxer. And when they found out about me, I got nominated. Two other guys were also nominated. But for some reason, they gave me the award. The award was the Arthur Ashe Courage Award. And I got compared next to Muhammad Ali, Howard Cosell, Billie Jean King, and Nelson Mandela. And that's only to name a few of their great achievements. And so when I got nominated with them, I said, man, you got to be kidding me, man. That was the last thing I suspected. But there was something else that happened along the way while I was up there and I made that speech. I told them I wanted to fight pro. I wanted to know what it was like. I want to know what it feels like. I want to be able to say to myself, I went for it. I don't want nobody to tell me I can't do it. I'm 52 years old, but I still believe in my ability. I don't believe that I can't do it. I believe that I can do it. Give me a chance. And so when I got the chance, the first thing that happened is I went out to Los Angeles, California. We left New York City at 3 o'clock in the morning and got out there 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And when I got out there 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the first thing they did is I didn't even have a chance to unpack my stuff. They put me through 5 hours of testing. 5 hours. And then from 2 o'clock to 7 o'clock, when 7 o'clock came, they took me to a gym. I still got the IV blood running still up in my vein. They just took the blood and everything. And guess what they tell me? They said, you got to take this test. All right. But here's the test. 5 minutes of jump rope, 1 minute rest. 5 minutes on the speed bag, 1 minute rest. 5 minutes of heavy bag, 1 minute rest. And 5 minutes on the pad, 1 minute rest. And then you got to go out here and spar with a heavyweight for 3 rounds. And he's like this. He's chilling. He like this is waiting on me. And I'm doing all his work, right? And so, I mean, my wife, he was trying to put it on me so much that she walked out the gym, right? That's how much he came at me. And I did everything I was supposed to do. I did everything. And you know what they did? They failed me. They said, you failed. Off. I went off. And you killing me, man. You're killing my dream. I said, yo, if he did the same thing I did, I probably would have knocked him out. I probably would have dropped him. Yo, you don't want me to have this, man. You don't want me to do it. You scared. And so they told my wife, they said, listen, man, we're going to give him another chance. We're going to give him another chance. All right. You going to give me another chance? This time, Oscar De La Hoya and Bernard Hopkins. And the Bernard Hopkins camps got involved. And when they got involved, there was a lady by the name of Maura. She the one that introduced me to a guy by the name of Danny Davis. And Danny Davis is one of the head trainers that work with Bernard Hopkins. And so I'm working out with him and everything. The first week, I lost 10 pounds in 4 days. That's how hard he worked me. And he had me going out with guys 22 to 28. It wasn't none of that. He was not playing with me. He didn't want to give me no slack. He had me pros. He had me going out with a guy who was getting ready for a world championship fight, WBC championship. He was rated number 3 in the world, so he was not playing with me. And he had me spar with him for 6 rounds, so it wasn't no game. And then they had me do the test before I went and took the test. And so when I got out there to take the test, guess what happened? I passed. Oscar De La Hoya in the corner with me. Do this, do that, da-da-da-da-da-da. And then he gave it to me. And when he gave it to me, I said, okay, great. I said, nah, I got to step to my business. And my business is to go out here and prove to everybody, not only me, but to everybody who gave up, everybody who said that they cannot, achieve anything in life. Anybody who said, listen, man, you know what, I don't want to deal with this no more. Because I said something. Fear determine who you are, and never let where you come from determine where you are going. And I had to live by that motto. And so when I got out there and I had to fight with Larry Hopkins, he was putting it on me in the first round, but I woke up. And after I woke up, the next 3 rounds I put it on him. And when I put it on him, I had him where he's almost knocked out in the 4th round. They'd have gave me 10 more seconds, he'd have been laid out. And I wasn't even tired. That's the whole thing about it. I was just getting started. And my message is this. Don't let nobody tell you what you can't do. From a high school dropout all the way to a master's degree. And if they'd have gave me a chance, I'd have went for my PhD. That's how serious I took it once I made up my mind. I knew I was no dummy. I was just mad, frustrated, and angry, and I did it the wrong way. And when I woke up, I never looked back. And that's my message. My message is never let anybody kill your dreams. Never, ever, ever don't believe in yourself. And if there's something that you want to do, and you believe that you have the chance to do it, give yourself a chance. Give yourself that chance, because you never know. I found out what it was like to be a pro, and I liked it. I enjoyed it. It's over with now, but it is what it is. I got that chance. And here's the catch. I'm the first man ever at the age of 52 years old to get his license out in Los Angeles, California, and the first man ever to fight at the Staples Center under the Bernard Hopkins, Chad Dawson undercard. Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, none of the Olympians, even Sugar Ray Leonard, none of them have ever done that. So I accomplished a dream bigger than them. And I'm happy about that. And with that, I would like to say thank you.